All right, you guys, we're on to 4.4 notes, which is graphing in slope-intercept form. So looks like I accidentally forgot to change this, and I'll have to go back and do that in the system later. That's my fault, but this should say 4.4. Whoopsie whoopsie. Just realized that. So anyway, we'll ignore that part. But we are going to work on graphing linear equations in slope-intercept form. So we're going to kind of basically put everything together that we've learned in 4.1 through 4.3 about slope and how we count it and how we graph it. And then especially when we talked in the last lesson about what M and B both stand for, now it becomes super important that you understand what they are in order to be able to use them to help you graph the line. Okay, so let's just kind of recap really quickly about what those are. With slope, you've got rise over run. Remember that when you're graphing those or reading a graph, if it's up for rise, it's a positive. If it's down, it's a negative, and our run is to the right. Okay? Remember that this is also the part that is repeated over and over again, right? For the y-intercept, that is the exact point on the y-axis. Okay? It's where it crosses the y-axis. And you're always looking for it to be 0 and then whatever the y value is, right? So M and B. Remember too that M is always the number that is next to X. If there isn't an X in the equation, then it has to be the B value, the y-intercept. So things to think about. Remember those special cases that we talked about when we did the last couple of lessons. Okay, so let's get started. To review just a little bit from the last lesson, let's talk about M and B in the equations again, just to refresh your memory a little bit. So for these first couple, when we're doing the equations, we're going to determine what the slope and the y-intercept of the equation is. Okay, so remember your slope is M and your y-intercept is B. So here, my M is the number that's with X. Well, you're probably thinking there isn't a number with X, Mrs. Heron. But if we have just an X all by itself, think about how many you have. If it doesn't tell you that there's any more and it's just that single one sitting there, then we know there's a 1 in front of that. We learned that when we were solving equations. So your slope would be 1. Or if you wanted to write it as rise over run, it could be 1 over 1. Your B is the number that's out there by itself, which would be 3. Okay, another special case here. We have M, which is our 5 because it's next to X. Then when I go to look for B, there's nothing out here. So if there's nothing out there, that would be like saying +0, right? That's why they don't write it there, because it isn't anything. So our B would be 0 as well. Now, in number 3, they've tried to trick you by putting them backwards. So again, you have to pay attention. Your slope is the number that's with X. That would be over here. It's also negative because it's always taking the sign that's in front of it. So this would be -3 for my slope. And my B actually comes first this time, which is a +2. Okay, the last one's pretty normal. M comes first, so 1/2. And my B is -7. Okay, so just a refresher, be looking for those special cases, take your time, make sure that you're doing what you need to do with M and B, okay? Now, graphing. Here are your steps. Step 1 is to tell me what is the slope and what is the y-intercept in the equation. So we've been doing this whole time. So you're literally going to write out like we've been doing. What is M and what is B so that you know. You are going to start with the y-intercept on the y-axis. Okay, it's on the y-axis. Just like we talked about the other day when we were pointing it out from a graph. Then from the y-intercept, you're going to plot the slope because it repeats. So you can get lots of points on the line when you repeat the same process, like up 3, right 2, up 3, right 2. Then, of course, we have to kind of play connect the dots, and we draw a line through the points. Now, these are lines, so they are going to have arrows on both ends because we're just giving a few points, but they go on forever. Don't forget, if it's positive, it's up and right. If it's negative, it's down, then right. Okay, let's keep this in mind as we go to the next part. So, look at those steps over there. The first one was to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So let's look at this equation and let's say, what is our slope and y-intercept out of here? Well, my slope is going to be 4 and my y-intercept is 2. So back over here, plot the y-intercept on the y-axis. It's the y-intercept, so it has to go on the y-axis. It's 2. So 2 on the y-axis is up 2 because it's positive. Then the next step says, from the y-intercept, plot the slope. Okay, well, here's where you have to start putting things together. My slope is 4. Well, 4 doesn't tell me rise over run. So remember, 4 as a fraction would be 4 over 1. This means up 4, right 1. So I'm going to start right here at my y-intercept, and I'm going to do exactly what my slope tells me to do. Up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. And then put a point. Now I'm going to repeat it because slope repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. And I'm going to put another point. Now you've got a few points, and we're going to draw the line and put arrows on both ends. Now, if I wanted to have a point somewhere over down here, I would have to go the opposite direction. These are all going up 4 over 1, up 4 over 1. So I would need to go down 4 and the opposite way 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. Now, obviously my line got a little crooked, so it's okay, but that would need to go through the line. Then down 4 over 1. Okay, so you can go both directions, but to start, I always want you to go to the right. Then you can go backwards if you need to show you where the other part of the line is. All right, hopefully that's okay. So we're going to start at the y on the y-axis with our intercept. Once you get the y-intercept, you're going to plot the slope more than once, and then we're going to draw our line. Okay, let's do another one. Identify first. So my m is negative 1/3. My b is negative 3. Start with the y-intercept on the y-axis. So I'm going to go down 3 and put my point. Okay, this is where we start. Then we use our slope to repeat. This is negative, so I'm going to go down 1, right 3 from this point. So down 1, right 1, 2, 3. Put a point. Let's repeat. Down 1, right 1, 2, 3. Put a point. Repeat. Down 1, right 1, 2, 3. Put a point. Now there's that way. If you want to have points over here on this side, we have to go the opposite, which is going to be up 1, and left 1, 2, 3. Up 1, left 1, 2, 3. Now, see if you know you're doing it correctly when all the points will line up in a straight line. Again, my line's a little crooked. Yours will be 2 when you're freehanding it. But think about where it has to land in order to do that. If you get only the point way up here, and these all 3 are in a line, we know that can't be correct, right? It has to join itself right there on the line that we've already got. Okay, again, hopefully this is familiar. You guys have done this before in the past. I'm hoping that it comes back to you. Okay, let's start again. What's my M? What's my B? Well, my M is in front of X. There's nothing there right now, but there is an X. So that means there's how many? Just 1. So here's 1. If you want to write it as a fraction, it would be 1 over 1. Okay, my B is -7. So again, we're going to start here with your y-intercept. Down 7 on the y-axis. My slope is positive, so it's up and then right. So up 1, right 1, put a point. Up 1, right 1, put a point. Up 1, right 1, put a point. Up 1, right 1. You can do this for as far as you want. And then if you want some over on this side, we have to go not up and right, but down and left. And see how it falls right there in line with the other ones. Then draw in your line, put your arrows, and you're all done. Graphing slope-intercept form. Okay, let's do a couple more. Special case. Hopefully you're noticing that. So we've got M and B. My slope is next to X, so it's -1/5. Negative means I'll go down and then right. My B should be out here somewhere. Well, it's not there, which means there's nothing, which means it would have said plus nothing or 0. So my y-intercept is at 0. Again, hopefully you're thinking, we're going to start from here. So I'm going to go to my y-axis. I'm going to put a point at 0 at the origin. My slope comes next. It's repeated over and over again. So down 1, right 5. Put a point. Down 1, right 5. Put a point. Now I want some over here. So I have to do the opposite. Up 1, left 5. Put a point. Up 1, left 5. Put a point. You can see again, they all line up. So if they're not lining up, you have done something incorrectly. Sorry for the crazy squiggly line. Okay, be thinking about that every time. Try the next one, pause it, see if you can do it on your own, and then check your answer to make sure. Okay, so same thing. M and B, 3/4 and -1. Start from the bottom with B, -1, up 3, right 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I need this side. So down 1, 2, 3, left 1, 2, 3, 4. Down 1, 2, 3, left 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's your line. Okay, hopefully you got that one. You're doing okay. Hopefully, again, it's review and it doesn't have to be really hard for you. Now, here's what I mentioned in the last video, the hooivax, the special cases. This should be feeling normal to you. You've heard this now a couple different times, and now we're going to kind of go in more detail about what it means, okay? So, hoi stands for a horizontal line. And if you don't know, horizontal means this way, from left to right, like the horizon of a sunset, okay? O isn't really O. It stands for zero slope, like our flat driveway. This is our flat driveway that we've been talking about that whole time, right? So it has no slope. It's an OK. And then Y means that it is a Y equals equation, which I didn't do on here. Man, I must have been really out of it when I wrote these notes. You can thank Mr. O'Brien for that. He was helping me. So Y equals equation, which also means that it has a Y axis that it crosses. Okay. And it also means that it has a y-intercept. So y, right? So this would be my equation. Sorry, I apologize for that. I'm going to come over here and make this one an x because I messed it up too, obviously. Sorry about that, you guys. So y equals, notice you don't see an x, right? So if you were writing about it as m and b, there's no number that's next to x. There's no x even, which means that this would have been 0. There were 0 x's. And then your y-intercept is all that's left, and that's 3. Okay, so if you go over here to your graph and you say, well, my y-intercept is 3, but I have 0 slope, so I can't go up or down, means I can only go to the right. But it doesn't tell you how many to go to the right. Well, that's because you can go as much as you want. 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and you can go any direction you want because this is a horizontal line. So it's going to go straight through that intercept and be flat, 0 slope. Hoi, horizontal, 0 slope, a y equals equation with a y-intercept only. Okay, so if I flip this over and I talk about this guy, now we're on the opposite. This is vux. So hopefully you're already filling in your brain. This would mean vertical. So vertical lines go this way, up and down. This has an undefined slope, which we've already talked about several times. And it's an x equals equation, which means it has an x-intercept only, and it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so if you look down here, your M and B, your M is undefined because it doesn't have an answer. There isn't a number, there isn't a Y, it doesn't have to work like that. And of course, if it doesn't go through the y-axis, it can't have a y-intercept. So this would be none. It doesn't have one. So when you're showing a picture of it, it's an x-intercept. So on the x-axis, I put a point at -5. It can't go through the y, so it can't go this way because it can't go through the y. So it can only go up and down. Vux, vertical, undefined slope, x-intercept, x equals equation. These, again, are going to be so important. The easiest ones, yet the ones that will give us the most trouble. Work hard on these. Ask questions. Make sure you're practicing.